Good evening, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hey, Adam G. Guys, as you guess it's Miss Earth season already. Yup. In just a week, more than 80 contestants from around the world will be gathering here in Manila for the annual pageant. And I'm so excited because look who I'm here with. I'm being given a chance to interview one of the most sought delegates of Miss Earth this year. I've already interviewed her after her crowning moment last January, and so a great interview deserves a follow-up. So here she is, coming very early for the pageant. Please say hello to Miss Earth USA 2024, Bea Milan Windarski.
Hi, magandang gabi. Thank you so much for taking the time to interview me because I had such a fun time during our virtual interview. So it's so exciting that you're actually the first media interview I'm doing here in the Philippines.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Guys, she looks so tall. My gosh, I feel like a dwarf standing next to her right now.
I thank my dad for that. He's Polish American and around 6'1". So I grew up actually drinking 3 glasses of milk a day because he grew up on a dairy farm. So we always were drinking milk, being from Wisconsin.
Yeah. So you're so used to your height already. But was it the same thing when you were younger?
No, I was really shy about my height and honestly really disliked it. When I was younger, it was something that made me stand out. I felt quite insecure about it. There was a bit of bullying because I was so lanky. I looked kind of like an ostrich. But now that I'm older, I've really embraced the height. I used to hate, especially in the Philippines, people stare. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that it's people stare out of curiosity. There's never any malintent. And I really appreciate that I have this attribute that makes me stand out.
Wait, so you've lived here before?
No, I would just visit growing up every 2 to 3 years. And anytime I was out in public, especially in the province, it would be people just going like, and it was never anything bad. It was just people being curious.
So if I remember it right, you trace your roots from Nueva Vizcaya, right?
Opa. My family were homesteaders in Nueva Vizcaya, but many generations back they actually came from La Union, which is why my Lola eventually decided to move back there after her retirement.
Oh, which explains why you went there as soon as you arrived here a few days ago.
As soon as I landed, I wanted to make sure I spent time with my Lola, and I also volunteered with Project Kerma. It's a turtle sanctuary and hatchery that I grew up volunteering at every time I visited the Philippines.
How did a lovely girl like you develop her love for the environment?
Definitely helps that I grew up playing with baby turtles, helping them get released back into the ocean. But also in the United States, my dad really emphasized hiking, spending time in nature, and we went to national and state parks as our vacations. Instead of going to Disney World, we would go do 10-plus-mile hikes as a family and spending time enjoying the great outdoors, seeing what the U.S. had to offer, made me realize how important it is we have zones of protection like national parks, but also how if we don't make a change now, those protected zones might disappear regardless of the protections that are currently in place.
I've never been to Wisconsin, so I assume it's a place full of nature, full of sceneries, greeneries, which made you appreciate about our environment right now.
Where I'm from is predominantly agricultural based. So growing up around farming, I really learned that humans, we live off the land, we depend on it. So we have to be responsible stewards of nature because if we disrespect the land that we rely on, then eventually it's going to fight back. I also grew up in Wisconsin going to a completely outdoors preschool. So nature was really my first classroom.
That is so great to hear. And you eventually imbibe it all the way to adulthood.
Yes, and I'm so fortunate to now have this platform because not only do I broadly advocate for environmentalism, but I also bring in my passion for international relations. And as my role of Miss Earth USA, I've also been able to advocate for climate displacement education and the rights of climate displaced people.
You know, that's a very interesting topic, climate change and people being displaced by it. You know, in fact, you know, if you read up about that topic, there are certain myths surrounding it. Like for instance, do a lot of people, as a result of climate change, do you think a lot of people move from one place to another because of it?
Definitely. Even within the Philippines, by 2050, if we keep up with current greenhouse gas emissions, 60 million people will be forced to move inland from coastal areas. However, a big myth surrounding climate displacement, especially in the global north and my home country of the United States, is that it's just going to be this mass influx of people from the global south to richer countries. However, the majority of climate displaced people are actually displaced within their borders. Additionally, I encourage people to recognize we have to facilitate a just and clean energy transition away from fossil fuels now so we can prevent this mass displacement of people in the future.
But how can that be possible when we're so when we're so driven by a lot of consumption, especially when in relation to our carbon footprint, the things that we do, traveling, eating out, yeah, everything involves
Consumerism.
consuming. Yeah.
That's why I feel so fortunate to represent the United States, because we are a leader in the international order. I feel like if we can fix our environmental policies, we can encourage our allies all across the world to follow suit. So that's why in my capacity as Miss Earth USA, I've also advocated for a banning of fracking in the US and a ban on liquefied natural gas, which releases 4 times as much methane as other fossil fuel sources. I really believe that through policy and governance, especially in the United States, we can lead to a brighter future, because us as a common consumer, we can make smart choices every day, like using reusable water bottles or using a canvas bag while we're shopping. But if we're able to push our governments to be better, that's when we can really make a macro impact as well.
That's only one aspect of climate change displacement. And if we talk about climate change displacement too, especially to our audience right here, where you can address them. You know, there's this, you know, when we talk about climate change displacement, I always think about weather disturbances, extreme weather disturbances. So, yeah, do you think it's a myth that climate change displacement only affects people who are affected by extreme weather conditions or disturbances?
Yeah, climate displacement impacts people in a multitude of ways. So 2 intensified hurricanes actually just hit my home country of the United States.
Milton and
Helene.
Yeah.
And there is science behind the fact that the warming of our planet, the warming of our oceans, leads to more intense typhoons and hurricanes. And a portion of climate displacement is definitely from the short-term impacts of natural disasters. However, it can also be the long-term impacts of climate change, like rising sea levels, prolonged droughts. Those 2 factors lead to land disappearing, especially in small island developing nations, but also land being untenable to farm in. I began being passionate about climate refugee advocacy when I started volunteering as an English as a new language tutor, and realized that a lot of these recent immigrant students from South and Central America were moving partially due to climate change. While they would be classified as economic migrants, they moved because the land was no longer farmable. Additionally, climate change is a risk multiplier to people who have already been displaced due to things like political violence. Some of my other students were refugees in refugee camps in Africa and parts of Southeast Asia. And those refugee camps are often built in the least desirable areas of a country, which means that they often face the brunt of pollution. One of my students who was in a refugee camp in Bangladesh, the river that her family was expected to wash, bathe, and drink water from was completely polluted. So her and a few climate activists, most notably Mohammed Anwar, all mobilized to clean up the river. Sorry, that was like an information dump, but I love that whenever we interview, I'm always able to really share the intricacies of my advocacy.
Yeah, as I listen to you, it can never be more profound than what is happening here in our country. Everything you just said is happening in our country. Drought, famine, rising sea levels, numerous typhoons or storms coming our way. So we need to take action, or we need to make great changes if we really want to combat climate change, especially in developing countries like our country, the Philippines.
And it is really easy to feel a sense of despair, to feel like climate change has gone so far that we can't do anything about it. But there are steps that we can take. I had the pleasure of planting a few trees with Project Karma because they also engage in ridge to reef programming. So not only do they address ocean life, but they also address biodiversity through forestry in the more mountainous and agricultural regions. And by just planting one tree, that's a carbon sink of 10 to 40 kilograms per year. So if we're all more conscientious and take steps to really combat climate change, our micro actions can have a macro impact.
I agree. We should plant more trees instead of erecting high-rise condominium buildings.
We say in Metro Manila.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you're very familiar with our geography here in the Philippines, but in Central Luzon, where Manila is at, there's the Sierra Madre mountain ranges that really help that really help stop the typhoons from inflicting more damage to our farmlands. So it really helps that we should educate people, or especially our youth, to really pay attention, by paying attention more about the environment, by planting trees, being mindful about what they're doing in relation to their carbon footprint for the environment. Yeah.
And one of the lessons that I taught in the classroom visits I've engaged in here in the Philippines is this idea of turtle mentality. Are you aware of the phrase like crab mentality?
Yes.
Yeah, people tearing each other down. But turtle mentality is actually the opposite. When sea turtles lay their eggs in a nest, they actually lay the largest, strongest eggs on the bottom and the weaker eggs on top. So when the turtles all hatch, the strongest hatchlings help their brothers and sisters out. And I really think it's necessary that we instill that sense of turtle mentality in the younger generations. And it does connect to the modes that our ancestors adopted, because about bayanihan spirit, helping one another out. I think it's so integral to Filipino culture, and it's really inspirational that I've had the opportunity to instill those values in our youth.
It's so nice now that you are ingrained with Filipino values despite your multiracial background in the US. I really appreciate that your mom has been really instilling in you a lot of Filipino things whilst growing up there in the US. I really like that. So with that, what sort of Filipino values brought by your cultural heritage, which I feel played out a significant role in shaping your identity as who you are right now?
A huge factor in my run for Miss Earth is my mom and my Lola, this emphasis on family, because at the age of 22, it's quite popular for people my age to not really be in contact with their families, want to go out and make their own way in life. And while I am trying to make a name for myself, I'm also always remembering where I came from, remembering the sacrifices of my family. my mom has spent so many times staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, stoning my dresses or making a hem, stuff like that. So I always try to remember at the end of the day, it's my family who brought me here. And I've also learned the values of hard work. I'm a third generation Filipino American entrepreneur. My great grandma, who I'm actually named after, Beatrice, she owned a sari-sari store, which she used
In La Union.
in Nueva Vizcaya before they moved back. She opened a sari-sari store to pay for my Lola's education. And then, because of that, my Lola was the first woman in her village to attend university. So I've always learned about sacrifices of our ancestors, and then also the emphasis on education that's always present in the Philippines as well.
That's great to hear. So apart from the Bayanihan spirit, what Filipino value do you still love to extol, or you are very proud of to have learned?
I'm very proud of that concept of pamilya, but I also appreciate how there are these kinship terms that you use in everyday life. Like I call you kuya, I call even random women I meet on the street ate. And I feel like it creates that immediate connection where we recognize each other's humanity. And that's something I've also integrated into my advocacy, because we need to realize that the most disenfranchised and vulnerable voices within our world are also our brothers and sisters. We need to understand the common humanity in one another and lift each other up instead of trying to close our borders and tear each other down.
You already speak like a true spokesperson
Thank
for your
you.
advocacy. So, how do you see your candidacy here in Miss Earth in relation to your future goals?
They align perfectly with my future goals, because my ultimate goal has always been to work for the UN High Commissioner for Refugees to create legal pathways for climate refugees to have legal standing and to seek asylum in safer countries due to the impacts of climate change. And Miss Earth having an environmental focus, but also being the only international pageant to ever be recognized by the United Nations, has been an excellent pathway towards my future ambitions. Additionally, I've been able to connect with so many NGOs, with even government organizations like the Environmental Protection Agency in my home country. And through those networks, I've been able to create future opportunities, not only for me, but also for future Miss Earth USAs.
Wow. I hope that will come into fruition, whether you win or lose in Miss Earth. Wow. As early as now, wow, you already have your career mapped out. Like, you already have the direction. You are already setting your sights onto something even beyond your reign.
What I really appreciate about the Miss Earth organization is that it embraces femininity and encourages us to enjoy the glitz and glamour of being a woman, but it also encourages us to use the attention we garner to push for real changes and to have a real sustained career after our life in pageantry.
As early as now, I can predict that you will be doing also well in this competition, given
Thank you.
your eloquence. Yeah, and know-how in a lot of environmental topics. As early as now, I won't be able to cover much of Miss Earth this year, but I can already predict you will be doing also so well.
Thank you. And I'm so glad I was able to catch you before you're off to Mexico.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for the opportunity. So, shall I say you'll be the next Lindsay?
Well, even if I'm not Lindsay with having the crown, I hope to replicate her success with having a real impact on her community and the environmental space.
Yeah, because I see her in you. You're not only beautiful, but you speak so well. And not only you speak well, but you have this ability to charm your audience.
Oh, I appreciate it. And
with hard-hitting topics such as what you're espousing, given that, not everyone knows about what's happening, the real deal or the nitty-gritty stuff when we talk about climate change displacement.
I think it definitely helps that I've had the honor of being able to spend some time with Lindsay Coffey. One of my first high-profile events as Miss Earth USA was attending New York Fashion Week in February, and that's when I met her for the first time. It was a bit embarrassing because I was just fangirling really hard, but she's been really helpful in my preparations for Miss Earth. She sent me some materials on the hashtag round, some mentality checks to keep myself sane throughout this process. So I really appreciate her help, and Laura Clark, the entire Miss Earth USA national team, Brittany and Paige, who's also been through this process and has been quite successful. I'm so lucky to be standing on the shoulders of such successful women.
What's one advice that is sticking out from them, from your group?
From them. It's definitely that Miss Earth, more than anything, is about staying strong. It is quite a long pageant with a lot of eco activities and engagements all around the Philippines. So it's important to kind of keep your head in the game, keep yourself grounded throughout the process. And Brittany was especially really helpful in encouraging me to mentally check in, make sure I'm pacing myself, not overexerting myself. So I really appreciate their very sound advice.
Yes, you need to pace yourself because guess what? Brace yourself. You'll be touring in a lot of provinces all over our country. So it's important that you strategize, know where to channel your energy the most, when you need to rest. Yeah, especially in a very hectic schedule like Miss Earth. So, yeah, good luck on your upcoming competition. As early as now, I can really, as I've said earlier, I can see you doing well in Miss Earth. Wow. So, for all those Filipino fans and even your fans, supporters outside the Philippines, how could you encourage them to rally behind you here in the forthcoming Miss Earth pageant here in Manila?
I encourage you to not only follow the Miss Earth USA page, but I also encourage you to follow Project Karma. If you're in the Philippines, they're a fantastic organization that focuses on a lot of biodiversity issues. And then I also would love if you followed my personal journey. Past the Crown at Earth Queen Bea is my handle on Instagram. Moving forward, I'll also be working for an environmental nonprofit after my reign. So I'll be continuing my work. It's not about the crown, it's all about the advocacy for me.
There you go. It's all about the advocacy for her. So, maraming salamat once again.
Thank you po! It's so nice to see you.
Me too.
That we got to meet in person.
Not just DMing and FaceTiming each other, but now seeing you in the real flesh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I can really feel it, guys. She could be the next Miss Earth. So come follow her journey in the upcoming Miss Earth pageant here in Manila. Follow her on @EarthQueenBea on Instagram and all across Miss Earth's social media accounts. There you go, guys. I hope you had a great time tuning in with my interview with Miss Earth USA 2024, Bea Windorsky here. God bless you.
Thank you.
And I hope the next time I see you, you finally have a crown.
We shall see. Maraming salamat po for tuning in. Ingat!
Bye!